This video is one part of my longer full video for the Halo Season 2 review. The link will be in the description if you'd rather watch the full video. Thanks. The characters are stupid a majority of the time for the story to happen. They're unlikable, they're inconsistent. I like to say that these inconsistent characters have what I call Kylo Ren syndrome, where they pretty much just behave however they're needed to for the scene, with no real through line for the season, or their character, or their behavior and decisions. And many of them have plot armor until it's convenient. The characters just have wild emotional swings from scene to scene. That way, whatever the director wants to happen to stir up drama can happen, whether or not it makes sense for that character. I'm going to limit my discussion to Master Chief, Parangosky, Ackerson, Halsey, Kai, Soren, and Laera as a pair, Kwan, Keys, Riz, Makee, and the Arbiter. I'll include timestamps in the description for each one, so if there's only one character you care about or one you want to skip, you can just click ahead. So obviously we're going to start with our main man, Jimmy Rings, aka Master Cheeks. Obviously his character is completely erratic. They waste a lot of time trying to continue this humanization arc. And I'm not sure why, other than to have some crappy drama. His character last season goes from pellet in the spine robot to angry and super erratic to sleeping with Makee. In this season he starts dead, gets lied to over and over again about something that he knows is true, becomes a wanted fugitive within the UNSC, still seems like he's kind of in love with Makee, knowing she's a genocidal maniac.
I can fix her. It's okay.
Is supposed to have emotions about Vanek, but then refers to him as meat when he's dead. Gives what's supposed to be an emotional speech thanks to Kwan telling him to. Sets out on a revenge quest against Parangosky and Ackerson instead of worrying about the Covenant, which just glassed Reach. For some reason, now trusts and misses Cortana, even though he hated her all last season until she turned him into a zombie. Now that he's supposed to value people more, he tells Kai, tough titties, we need to make sacrifices to win, and then changes his mind because Perez inspires him with a quarter, so he goes to Halo, where he just lets Makee walk away after she says she's going to kill everyone in the galaxy. This doesn't even include the dumb and disrespectful stuff like telling Ackerson to suck it all season. He mostly gets along with Halsey now inexplicably after trying to kill her last season. He's a total dick to Riz after she got injured, and Kai after he lies to her. Bad adaptation aside, his character doesn't really seem to have a through line. He preaches about stopping the Covenant and getting to Halo, but doesn't really take any action towards it until it's convenient for the plot. Most of his energy is spent bitching at the UNSC officials and seeking revenge on them. He just seems like kind of a stupid asshole. Like, yeah, everyone gets frustrated with their boss. Not everyone lies to the people that they're closest to, yells at them for being crippled, and then goes off and commits crimes and just does whatever they want without consequences. He also just straight up stalks Perez to her house multiple times because he didn't like her report. It's insane. There's also just the amount of coincidence that takes place for him to be where he is and be as important as he is. He happened to be a blessed one in a billion. He happened to stumble upon a Forerunner artifact. He happened to get chosen for the Spartan 2 program, a couple dozen out of tens of billions. He happened to be the one to go to Madrigal and come across another artifact. He happened to run into Makee, and they happened to bone and go to Halo together in their subconscious. He happened to be the one to get Cortana, and he happened to be the first one to get to Halo. This is just a wild series of coincidences instead of cause and effect. This is on top of all the other plot armor. When he talks to Perez, he says, I know I have plot armor because I read the script. He says that, I know when I go into battle, I'll lose people, but it'll never be me. Then she questions if he made the coin come up heads 11 times in a row. It's just lunacy. The plot armor that he has in this season alone is insane. On Sanctuary, the one elite that actually lands a blow suplexes him instead of stabbing him with a sword. He's just allowed to live instead of killed or captured because it looks dramatic and cool, I guess. Parangosky and Ackerson want him dead. Never arrest him, never execute him. He gets shot without armor, point blank with a plasma pistol. Makee saves him again on Reach after saving him on Sanctuary right when he's about to die. Also, instead of kidnapping him, just walks away. On Onyx, the team of soldiers going after him doesn't shoot him on sight, and they just surround him. Even though they never interrogate him, they just decide not to shoot him. He's able just to wander around the base until he runs into Kai, who beats the shit out of him, but no one else comes and finishes him off. He crashes a Covenant ship onto Halo, and Cortana explicitly says, we're gonna die, and counts down to their death. Just walks it off. The Arbiter in their final duel just lets him live at least twice for drama. This is all just this season. And it's just terrible that this is the version of Cheeks that we get stuck with. I'm going to stop here for John and move on to Parangosky. But he's just perpetually a dick, does whatever he wants, saved by the script. It's a travesty that we couldn't get anything resembling Master Chief beyond the fact that he wears armor sometimes. I want to talk about Parangosky next because she might be the most destroyed character from the lore, which is kind of crazy. In the show last season, she bets on Halsey the whole time, and that just goes away. She's the most important Oni person, but then she decides to pretend to be fired to talk to John. She can literally have him arrested, killed, suspended, whatever, until she gets what she wants. She then decides to kill the Spartan 2s because even though they've removed their pellets and seemingly have no interest or loyalty to Halsey, they use this as a lip service excuse to say the Spartan 2s are crazy suddenly. Then she decides to just abandon Reach, their most important military base and colony, leave Cortana behind, violating the Cole Protocol, and rely on coincidence and luck to hope that Cortana can lead them to the fleet or something, and she just lets them take the Forerunner artifact. All of this for the master plan of fighting them at Onyx so they can send in hundreds of untrained Spartan 3s on a suicide mission to blow up the entire solar system.
I have a plan.
She even says, we need 1 million soldiers in order to replace one Spartan 2. What the fuck is this plan? Then she just tells Ackerson right to his face, I'm gonna blame you if this doesn't work out, and then she has surprise Pikachu face when he betrays her. And then in the finale, she tries to order Chief around after spending all season trying to gaslight and kill him before she just dies a lame-ass death of being dry humped to death by the Flood. She's just a retarded character. I don't believe that she could become the Admiral of anything, and certainly not Oni. If anyone is curious, in the books, she's battling for power behind the scenes, working with Admiral Hood, but also has her own secret projects going on, and she's a very ends justify the means type character. Like, she flat out says, I'll go to hell if it'll save humanity. Like, that's how she is. And the show just makes her out to be a fucking idiot who thinks that she's smart for drama. This is what happens when you let retards write for a character that's supposed to be intelligent, and they're incapable of doing it. Alright, let's move on to Ackerson. Ackerson is another character that suffers from Kylo Ren syndrome. He's cartoonishly evil in the first half of the season. They try to gain sympathy by having his dad be demented and dying, and his sister was killed in the Spartan 2 program. I don't believe that he ever would have been able to get to the level he is in the military if that was the case. Or if he was, he certainly wouldn't have been in a position where he could have access to those files to know that information. He lies to John over and over and contributes to abandoning Reach and Cortana, and then steals John's armor so that he can't fight as well. At one point in the show, when Parangosky's going to sacrifice the Spartan 3s, he says that they're his life's work, and Perez is the best one after a week. He's a complete buffoon. He puts Kai in charge of the program, again for a week or two, but really, she just turns on the simulator and says, good job or bad job, guys. Again, making her irrelevant and him incompetent. Then, when John finally catches up with him, he folds like a bitch and does exactly what John tells him to, and he's supposed to be redeemed because he told Parangosky to suck it. This is just another unbelievable arc where they want him to have a redemption, but he hasn't done anything to actually earn it, especially considering how evil he was the first half of the season of the show. In the books, he's really political, he's a dick about the Spartan 2s, but he's not an idiot, and he's brave all the way to the end of his life when he's tortured by the Covenant for information and lies to them to protect his brother. And the show just strips away all the nuance and makes him an asshole. Let's move on to everyone's favorite scientist and sometimes villain, Halsey. Halsey was the villain of season 1, but the show kind of wants you to forget that. This season, she just starts off arrested somehow and is being psychologically tortured by Ackerson, but then she also acts like a total bitch to him. She gets hyper emotional over Key's death when she never really cared about him before, and season 1 even shows that. She goes to Onyx, takes charge of the Forerunner shit that Miranda's doing, and then is outsmarted by Kwan because Kwan is just literal magic. And now her and Miranda are suddenly buddies when they had no relationship prior, or at least not a good one. The whole season she just kind of drifts along, happens to be needed for random things, and then unleashes the Flood. And then she gets infected and put into cryo. Even when she sees Soren again, he forgives her for not really any real reason other than she says that she let him go and she can also do the surgery for Riz. She just kind of bounces from place to place, and there happens to be a task that she needs to do on hand. She doesn't really have any agency, it feels like, this season. They also do a retcon here that they probably think isn't a big deal that kind of makes her a psychopath. She knew about the Forerunners and their technology before the Spartan program, and she says that she picked the Spartans based on these Forerunner genetic flags. Essentially like she's a mad scientist trying to force evolution in humans. In the original lore, She was supposed to have created the Spartans to fight the insurrectionists because humanity was on the brink of just falling apart in a decades-long war costing billions of lives. And the Covenant just happens to show up once the Spartans are a little bit older. This scene removes any of that gray area and just makes her a complete lunatic. Like in any other story, she would just be the straight-up villain. This also completely screws up the timeline because the idea that the humans wouldn't be more advanced than the Covenant after having Forerunner technology for decades and access to it and trying to decipher it, reverse engineer it. Humans' advantage is that they're innovative and adaptable. That's their advantage over the Covenant. Obviously in the books, she's a really complicated character who's a person who did what they thought was best and it worked out, but is constantly struggling with regret, guilt, and she's also trying to justify that what she did was right and sort of rationalize it to herself so that she can live with herself. The books actually make her a worse person later on, which is why a lot of people dislike the Kilo 5 trilogy. I didn't mind it because I felt like she kind of skated by without being held accountable, but that's a whole other debate. Either way, you can see all the interest and nuance in this character has just been lost in the show. Let's go on to Kai next. Kai's a weird one because you can tell that they actually had a decent idea for her arc and it was just horribly done. The arc that they were trying to do seems like she was supposed to be incredibly loyal to John. He lied to her. She feels betrayed and that breaks her loyalty. And then when she realizes that John was right, she sides with him again, but then is also duty bound. Obviously the show doesn't really manage to do any of this. Knowing that Reach fell, which she does, she's in the simulator in the hall that apparently is the only fucking hall on Reach where she's dealing with her guilt. She also has Perez in her unit, who probably could have told her that John was alive. All of this shows that John is right. Ackerson just straight up acknowledges that Makee is alive, again confirming that John was right. The Spartans are supposed to be the best of humanity, not just physically, and she doesn't put it together that John was right the whole time. What makes this even more ridiculous and just plain stupid is that she says that she trusts John and then beats him almost to death anyway. And then what makes it worse is after all this, they reconcile, they're buddies again, she realizes that he wasn't lying. She says that she has to be with the Spartan 3s because she's their leader, even though she just trained them for a couple weeks in a simulator, and just abandons John, who she's known for her entire life. We also see that she has terrible leadership skills because the 3s suck ass. Perez is the best one after a week, and Perez constantly challenges her authority and calls her an idiot and talks about how much bullshit the simulator is, to the point where Kai has to yell at her, "I'm your commanding officer." This reminds me of Tywin making fun of Joffrey in Game of Thrones when he says that any man who has to scream, "I am the king," is no true king. Fighting wise, she doesn't really do shit all season, except for this terrible self-sacrifice attempt where she doesn't even do her job because she was supposed to use the spike. She easily could have said, "Hey everyone, abandon the system, I'm putting the spike in." They go to subspace, boom, she blows it up. Instead, we get a crappy one-liner. Somehow the battle's turned because of 2 ships blowing up, and she's probably alive if she's willing to renew her contract, and this show gets a season 3. Another complete waste of potential for the ideas that they had, and on top of it, they stole Kurt's character from the book Ghost of Onyx. He's awesome in that book, and you should definitely read it. I'm going to go through Soren and Laera next because they take up so much damn screen time. His character this season is just crazy. He was Pirate King last season, and then falls for the super obvious bait in episode 1 after being kind of a dick to his son and wife. And I'm not even sure what this bait was supposed to be. They show up and it's just like space debris. And the kid's like, "Oh yeah, Halsey's right there." And he just walks on in. He sees Halsey, where they're both in prison. And then all of a sudden he's like, I kind of miss being a Spartan even though I had a family and was happy at the rubble. After this meandering bullshit all season where they're looking for his son, he finally finds him in the Spartan 3 program. And then all of a sudden he's like, nah, getting the shit beat out of him with batons is good for him. Until Laera's like, "Hey, retard, that's our son." And then he's like, "Oh yeah, good point." His character is another one who doesn't seem to have any agency this season. He gets dragged around as a prisoner and then by Halsey and then by Laera. He's another one who just kind of goes from place to place. I didn't really like him in season 1, but he was at least interesting and there was potential there. They completely wasted the actor, just like they did with Ackerson. And then his end to the season, now that Laera is dead, thank God, is him with Kwan, Kessler, and Ackerson. We don't even know where they're going, and they just happen to end up together. He also fights alongside Chief on Reach and beats up a bunch of guards of the Spartan 3 program on Onyx, like he doesn't even have a masturbation arm. He's another one who it seems like they didn't know what to do with, so they just kind of put him all over the place and gave him shit to do without any real meaning behind it or thought. Laera is maybe the weirdest character because she went from pretty much irrelevant trophy wife last season to annoying bitch this season. Suddenly she can beat up some of Soren's crew. She can fly a ship into a war zone and rescue the Spartans and her husband. Then when they're looking for Kessler, she yells at Soren and tells him that he's not feeling the way that she wants him to, and makes their relationship seem super fucking toxic. She also lectures him about running away from the Spartan program where he was a kidnapped child soldier in a bizarre rant. And then as part of a rant, she rips off her wig so you know she's changed. Then all of a sudden, she's a badass threatening this guy who deals in human trafficking and says that Soren has to stay outside because he's too squeamish for it. And then at the end of the season, she's the one who makes the self-sacrifice, not intentionally because she got infected by the flood, but still, she's the one who stays behind. To me, her entire character just seems like some kind of self-insert girl boss bullshit. And even if it wasn't self-insert bullshit, which I think it was, her character is annoying every time she's on screen, to the point where when she dies, I'm just like, huh, all right then. I can't imagine anyone being sad about her death because she sucks so bad. The same way that I can't imagine anyone gave a shit when they found Kessler. He's not really a character. He's just kind of there, which is pretty amazing to have a child character get kidnapped and your emotional response is like, huh, I wish we had less screen time on this. Oh, man. Let's move on to Kwan because she doesn't have as much screen time this season, but she actually might be the most important character in the show now. I feel pretty comfortable saying that the decisions made on Kwan, as far as the show goes from a meta perspective, are easily the worst ones. Last season, she was an annoying, rebellious teen, and then this one, she's an indentured servant badass. Then she's just magic. Then she outsmarts Miranda and Halsey, and she can also hold the flood back and inspire Chief to be better, and that's straight from Halsey's mouth. She saves the Spartans, Halsey, and Soren with Laera, and she's the one who got Kessler shipped off to the Spartan 3 program to begin with, but never gets blamed for it. She doesn't really have much personality. She's just kind of a walking MacGuffin. Thank God they listened to the fans about how much they found her character annoying, and instead of killing her all for reducing her time, they made her the most important character. This is the kind of thing that just feels like a real fuck you to the fans. There's not even that much to actually say about her, because she doesn't say much unless it's just exposition or some kind of magic bullshit where she's moving the plot along around everyone else without them even knowing. Like, she's the key to the flood being unleashed. I want to talk about Keys briefly. He really didn't have much to do this season. He's kind of Ackerson's bitch until he says go fuck yourself, which is completely out of character, completely unprofessional. And then he chooses to sacrifice himself instead of one of the grunts, which is what a smart admiral or a tactical admiral would do. Maybe they couldn't afford the actor for the whole season. I kind of just wanted to mention him because they wasted his character and the actor. The actor was actually just in the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and it was nice to see him allowed to be charismatic and have something to do, even if that movie wasn't great. This show just really didn't give him much to do at all. He's just kind of there. Another waste, both of a character from the lore and an actor. I'm going to move on to Riz. Also don't have too much to say about her, Makee, or the Arbiter, but they're important, so I wanted to at least mention them. Riz's arc is one of the most uninspired things I've ever fucking seen. She goes from still being hurt 6 months later, ignoring that John was literally brought back from the dead after at least minutes, possibly hours, but her injuries are still bothering her. She decides that she's tired of being a Spartan and retires. Usually when you go this route, the character discovers something they actually care about doing. There's something they regret missing out on, but they don't do that in this show. Riz says that she's proud of being a Spartan and wouldn't know what to do with her life if she wasn't. But then John yells at her. She has one sit-down dinner with the gay blind guy and his husband, and then she's like, nah, I'm done. And it could have been an interesting arc. They just don't do anything with her. Seriously, how hard would it be for her to use that time off to go on a day out and just have fun and do things that she's either not normally doing or she's doing them for military purposes so she doesn't get to enjoy them. And you can play your little happy music and have her have that moment where she's kind of questioning what she's doing with her life. They don't do any of that. They give her like half an hour of screen time and 2 personality traits maybe. It seems like they had about 100 ideas that were decent, and instead of picking a couple good ones and really going in on them, they tried to do all of them, so they end up doing none of them. I want to talk about Makee and then finally the Arbiter. Makee is a zombie, I guess, because she's just suddenly undead. Aside from that idiocy, which never gets explained, her only character trait is cultist, zealot, and she's kind of in love with Chief. None of her story really makes sense. She orders the Arbiter around, but then she's afraid of him in the Covenant. She's a 1 in a billion blessed one who can use the Forerunner artifacts, and she likes the Covenant, but they're threatening her for some reason while she's also giving them orders. There's not a ton to say about her because there's simply not much to her. She's another one who's just kind of a walking plot device. But they clearly plugged her in for what would have been the Arbiter in Halo 2 because they needed to save money on the CGI. Obviously, I don't like that to begin with, but they could have at least fleshed her out fleshed the Arbiter out and at least helped us explore the Covenant side of things in the TV show. They pretty much just rely on everyone with the video game knowledge filling in this entire part of the story with their prior knowledge, because the show doesn't explain shit from the Covenant. It would have been nice if we had actually explored some of her ideas, because she doesn't really say anything besides, everything sucks, I'm going to kill everyone and just start over. Like, she wants to have Noah's Ark with her and John on the Halo ring. It would have been nice if they had been like, oh, the Covenant has found more blessed ones, now you're disposable. Then it makes sense when they threaten her. Or, if we had seen that maybe she's not a true believer, she's just manipulating the Arbiter. Or if we had seen that she is a true believer, but she's trying to save her life also. Or if her and the Arbiter had gotten a little bit into sort of the structure of the Covenant and the politics. We don't do any of that. She's bossing them around, and then she's also afraid of them, and then they try to kill her. And then the Arbiter, because he's a true believer, buys into her bullshit. Which is crazy. The Arbiter might be the only character who's like mildly interesting out of the whole cast of like a dozen people that I just mentioned in this video. And the last character I'm going to talk about is the Arbiter. The Arbiter is another one that has like the bare bones of a decent arc, but it really relies on you already knowing the lore to fully understand it. The idea of him being so loyal to his ideology that he's able to be manipulated by Makee, betray the prophets, kill his own crew, and then get to Halo, which is his religious goal, only to end up dying, being killed by a demon, could have been a pretty interesting arc. Unfortunately, the dynamic between him and Makee makes no sense, like I said, and because they couldn't really afford to put him on screen, we just don't get much time with him. These traits about him being a religious zealot are pretty much all we know about him, and another good idea kind of wasted in a dog shit show. Even in Halo 2 alone, the Arbiter's arc is really interesting. He's supposed to be super high up in their military hierarchy, he's destroyed all kinds of colonies, he's been great for the Covenant as a leader, but then he failed to stop the Master Chief on Halo, not really his fault, and now the blame is being put on him, where he's being given this role of Arbiter, where essentially his job is to die with glory. And he fully embraces this because of his beliefs, and he actually kills a heretic who tries to tell him otherwise, only to find out later on that the heretic was telling the truth. And then he realized that his entire life has been a lie, and he has to join up with the demon that got him in trouble in the first place. And this is what causes the great schism in the Covenant. Like, that's an awesome arc. Way more explored in like an hour and a half of cutscenes than anything we get with the Arbiter in this show. Again, they really bit themselves in the ass, not just focusing on a few things and going really deep into them and trying to just cover a shitload of stuff. But that's it for me for the character discussion. You can see the characters are really all over the place. There's no consistency. I didn't even really mention any goals of the characters because any goals that they have are not very specific. They're all kind of nebulous. Even John's is just find Halo, win the war. Super vague goal, no real consistent principles or judgment or morals. They're not very fun characters. Everyone's pretty dour and serious. So just a huge failure in that capacity as a show. I have a membership tier now, thanks to the support from everybody, but I'm open to suggestions on what people actually want. I looked on a lot of bigger channels and they just seem to do like live stream shout outs and stuff. Comment your thoughts on the show below, maybe on the video as well. I do my best to respond to everything that's not an insult. Like and subscribe and all that. Thanks. See ya.